Hello, everyone. This is Hani Yousaf, your very proud Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. Welcome to the 2020-2021 school year. On Sunday evening, I sent an email to all certificated personnel. That email contained an attachment. The attachment outlines the requirements and expectations that we have for certificated employees going into this school year. Most of those bullet points in that document are very specific to classroom teachers. Some of those bullet points are relevant to all employees throughout CME Unified. What I'd like to do today is actually go over that document with all of you, which is why I created this message here. I'm using Screencastify. So as many of you were experiencing so many firsts throughout the last semester as we closed schools, and here we are opening schools in a virtual learning model, and more firsts for many of us. This is a first for me. So if it looks like I'm unsure as to how to navigate Screencastify, or I might be, fumbling and stumbling over some of my words, it's because I've never done this before. So as in education, we are really outside of our comfort zone in many ways. Some of us are very comfortable with virtual learning and teaching. Some of us are very comfortable with the technology and different programs, and others are doing things for the very first time, trying things and experimenting. So this for me is a first, sharing this message with all of you using Screencastify here. Before we dive into the details of this document and go over the expectations and requirements, I'd like to share some thoughts with all of you. When we closed schools on March 12, 2020, we thought we were closing schools for a couple of weeks. Those couple of weeks turned into a few weeks. And you know very well, those few weeks turned into our closing last school year in distance learning. Just think about that concept for a second, right? Distance learning, the idea of social distancing. They go against what we know to be good teaching and learning. They go against what we know to be healthy for all of our students. Our students are meant to collaborate. They're meant to play together. They're meant to share. They're meant to compete together. They're not meant to be socially distanced. Learning is not meant to be distanced. So here we are right now, and it's not a perfect situation for any of us. I know that all of us wish that we can be back in the traditional sense, and things were safe, and we can all go back, and everyone would be healthy, and those would be guarantees. But right now, that's not the situation. So here we are, trying to make the best out of a very complicated scenario for all of our students and all of our families and all of our colleagues. What I would like to do is actually thank members of our SCA leadership team and all members of the district leadership team. When June 5th ended and we ended last school year, we immediately, those two teams, SCA and district leadership team, got together and started to plan out how things would look going into this fall semester. How can we best meet the needs of all of our students? And how can we still maintain the health and safety of all of our employees? And so much uncertainty, as you know, took place last spring. It really was a crisis situation. It really was emergency learning. We weren't prepared for that. And we're doing our best to prepare for this fall semester, as all of you are. In this age of uncertainty, some things are still very certain to me, and I hope that they are to you. Regardless of how much uncertainty there is out there, what I am certain about, and I know you're certain about, is students will always be our number one priority. And I'm also very certain about the fact that educators, our mission is to support students with becoming the best potential version of themselves. We got into education to make people better people. We got into education because we love our students, we care for our students, we're passionate about our students. They will, and they will always be our number one priority. No matter how much uncertainty there is out there, we will continue to support students with becoming the best potential version of themselves. Those two things will not change. COVID won't change those priorities for us, won't change that mission for us. With that in mind, what I'd like to do right now is actually go over some of the requirements and the expectations that we have for certificated personnel, and in some cases for all personnel as we open on August 17th, 2020. The first thing that we need to do before we dive into the details of the expectations and requirements is we need to be very aware of what we're guaranteeing for all students. There are guarantees that we have for all students. And how did we arrive at those guarantees? Parents received a survey last spring, and staff members received the survey last spring. Specifically, certificated staff members received the survey last spring. And we just had maybe, it was a little over 700. It was a little over 700 staff members who completed that survey. And we had close to 8,000 parents complete that survey. So those are large samples. So we feel that we did receive a good enough response rate that these guarantees are relevant for all students throughout CMU Unified. Daily live video instruction. So all teachers will open their live virtual sessions in, or I shouldn't say in person, but you'll open them live and actually be with your students from the beginning of that session. But you don't have to be in a virtual mode teaching for the entire cohort session. You do have to be available for the entire session. Your check-in needs to be in person. And I keep saying in person, but what I mean is for you to be in a synchronous mode, live mode with your students via Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the platform is that you're using to interact with students. Establish office hours. All of our teachers need to be available throughout the day during those video sessions, but also established office hours. We know, we're going to get into this a little bit later too when we get to the document. Elementary teachers, you carve out that time when you're not teaching, and it usually happens before school, after school, but you got prep time also built into the schedules this year. So if you choose, you may use some of that prep time for establishing your office hours as well. Secondary teachers, obviously, the prep periods are still built in, but you also have a fixed office hour in your schedule moving into this fall. We're also guaranteeing for all of our students the cohort check-ins that I mentioned above with the daily live instruction. Consistent daily, weekly schedules. That expectation is that at the beginning of every week, all teachers will post weekly assignments. So there isn't a scenario where on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, Monday through Friday, students are waking up and they're not sure as to what the assignments are for that day or for that week. Teachers, obviously, you'll be able to add assignments during the week as you feel the need to, or you feel are necessary, but you'll post the assignments for the week so that parents, especially for the younger students we have, are able to support their students throughout the week, and they're very aware of what is expected of them going into that week. The consistent delivery platform, there were a number of platforms being used last spring, but what we're going to do is make things more consistent by the use of Google Classroom, and we'll dive into some of those details later on as well. So Google Classroom will be the entry point for all assignments. That'll be the central place where all assignments are kept, and parents and students will know that a teacher's Google Classroom essentially is where all information will be stored and contained and shared out with students. So those are our guarantees there for all students. And again, those came from the surveys from our parents and staff members. Unlike last spring, attendance is compulsory. It is compulsory. You are required to take attendance in Aries, and students will be assigned to an AM and a PM cohort model. And as you see there in that second bullet point, general education SEI students will be assigned to those AM PM cohorts. SDC students are special education students. Those student populations will have one cohort, and that will be a 3-hour cohort throughout the course of every day, so that the services can be provided after that 3-hour session, or 180-minute session. So a little variance there between our SEI students and general ed students, and then our SDC students. If parents or students are requesting to permanently switch out of a AM or a PM cohort, and they wanted to go from PM to AM or vice versa, at the elementary level, that request needs to be made with the site principal. At the secondary level, that request needs to be made with the student's assigned counselor. Teachers, we know that some parents on a given week may need to switch for the day. You know, next week I've got a appointment and I'm not able to assist my student with his or her work during the established AM assigned time. Can he or she go into the PM for that particular day? That will be a situation that the parents or the student works out directly with the teacher. So the reference to permanently switching a cohort is where the site principal needs to get involved or the counselor needs to get involved at the secondary level. But if we're talking about just a temporary switch for the day or a couple of days, that request will go to the teacher. I mentioned the SDC scenario where students are only going to be assigned to an AM cohort for those 180 minutes. Secondary students, so rather than take 6 classes, you know, again, we learned a lot from last spring with the challenges of trying to balance multiple classes all at the same time. So we're going with a 6-week model where students, secondary students that is, will take 2 classes every 6 weeks. And once that 6-week period ends, the student will have completed a semester's worth of credit in that particular class. Period 0, 7, and 8. Period 0, 7, and 8 will meet every day. Now, of course, and when I say they meet every day, in period 0, you'll still have an A cohort and a B cohort. They'll just meet, same thing with period 7 and 8, they'll just meet every other day. So you could have a situation where, you know, period 0, the cohort A will meet on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, alternating days, and then same with cohort B. In period 0, 7, and 8, they would meet Tuesday and Thursday, and then obviously the following week, they would alternate, right? So B could be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then the following week, A could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and so on. Students not attending instruction, not being in their assigned cohorts when teachers go live virtually. Those students are to be marked absent if they're not checking in at all. Again, attendance is compulsory. It should be taken in areas. Here are the required minutes of instruction per grade level. So kindergarten students are required to have 180 minutes of instruction per day. And grades 1 to 3, as you can see there, are 230 minutes, and then 4th and above through 12th grade is 240 minutes. So the way that our schedule are set up is every Monday is a late start. So students are going to have less instructional minutes every Monday. But Tuesday through Friday, we have 150 minutes set aside. So if you take a look at kindergarten, if kindergarten students are virtual with you in their session for 150 minutes, then the remaining 30 minutes would be assigned asynchronously or they're working independently outside of that. Same with the grades 1 through 3 for 230 minutes. You'll have them for 150 minutes, and then the remaining minutes need to be completed independently or through some sort of asynchronous activity that you assign to them. And then, of course, going with grades 4 through 12, the same holds true. 150 minutes of instruction. Apologies. Grades 4 through 12, 150 minutes of instruction, and the remaining time up to 240 minutes need to be completed outside of that live virtual opportunity that you have with them. Listed here are a number of asynchronous strategies. By no means are these the only asynchronous strategies that you can use. As a matter of fact, what I'm doing right now with all of you is asynchronous, right? I'm pre-recording a message for all of you using Screencastify that you can view at any time you'd like. And these are some of the ideas that have been shared in terms of what you can do asynchronously. I mentioned every Monday is a late start across the district, with exception to Justin, Apollo, and CME Institute. That's why we were very specific to outline comprehensive schools at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels. So every Monday is a late start throughout our district so that we can foster collaboration. Staff members, you were very clear on your desire last spring in the survey to have more opportunities to collaborate with colleagues and to be able to share best practices and share ideas. And obviously, that played a factor in our creating a model where throughout our district we can have late starts all at the same time on the same day. I mentioned office hours and what that looks like for elementary teachers and what that could look like. And I mentioned that a portion of your prep could be those office hours, but of course, we know that elementary teachers, you communicate with parents throughout the entire day, before school, after school, sometimes even on your lunch period, sometimes late into the night and on weekends. So we understand that, we respect that, and we recognize that. And first and foremost, we appreciate that. Secondary teachers, you've got established office hours already in your schedule. And that's what you will continue to use. But like our elementary, colleagues, we know same thing at secondary. It's before school, after school. You're communicating with parents and students throughout the course of the day, evening, and weekend. Initially, teachers were required to teach from their classroom, and as our conversations, evolved throughout the course of the summer, you now know that teachers may work from home. The district's position is very clear in that the individual classroom, the classroom is the primary work location. If for some reason you are needing to work remotely from your home, you would need to make an appointment with your immediate supervisor and discuss the opportunity to do so and the need to do so. And we listed here what reasons may be necessary for working from home: childcare issues, being medically fragile, caring for someone who is medically fragile, being in a high risk age group of 65 years or older, and then there are other concerns. We can't begin to predict and list out all the reasons that someone may need to work from home. But again, that request starts with your immediate supervisor. And those documents were shared with all of you through SCA leadership as well. And you can get them from your immediate supervisor if you need them. But you are not to work remotely until you've had that in-person or virtual meeting with your immediate supervisor, and both parties are in agreement with you doing so. I mentioned one of the guarantees is a consistent platform for our teaching and learning, and that's Google Classroom. So all teachers will create a Google Classroom for their students, and those Google Classrooms are to be up and running by August 17th, the first day of school, 2020. And all teachers, you will have an administrator be a co-teacher in your Google Classroom, and also an administrator will have access to your live video sessions as well. And we're also requesting that you make a site colleague a co-teacher as well. Again, we may have issues where substitutes may be necessary down the line, and your site colleague may be, or your administrator may be the individual who's going to help the sub do some of that. But we're still working on all the details of what that might look like for substitute teaching as well. I mentioned earlier the importance of having a weekly schedule established at the beginning of every week, right? That is something that our parents were asking for so that they can better support students with their learning while at home. And again, I mentioned a few minutes ago too that if you have your established weekly schedule and weekly assignment, it doesn't mean that you can't add or change anything to that. We just need all teachers to make sure that you're posting your, in Google Classroom, your weekly schedule at the beginning of every week. Please make sure to invite parents to be guardians in your Google Classroom as well. In some cases, our parents may request that, but we're asking you to make sure you invite parents directly through whatever communication mechanisms you have via email or however you choose to communicate with parents during this semester. So again, please involve our parents, of course, It's a partnership, right? That's what education is, a partnership between school and home. Chromebooks. So all of our students received Chromebooks, their own assigned Chromebooks to them. We have to thank the IT department for all the work they did over the summer, over the last few weeks, to make sure that Chromebooks were prepared for individual use and individual assignment. And also hotspots. We have 800 hotspots at this time. And, we know some students don't have Wi-Fi access at their homes or in their homes, I should say. So we did make available hotspots for all of our students who need them as well. And that's on a request basis. So our parents or students would request the hotspot and it would be assigned to them. Last semester, we're all very familiar with the no harm grading practices that we had last week. Why do I keep saying last week? Last semester. And, again, just as attendance is compulsory, just as things opening up this semester, this school year are going to be very different, grading is going to look very different also. So grading practices, we do not have a no harm grading practice going into this school year. You will grade students as you normally would grade students. They, need to submit assignments to you. They need to meet deadlines. Of course, you're encouraged to be flexible with students. The elementary grading calendar has been posted, and that has not changed. Elementary students are still following the same grading calendar that was established last spring. Fall conferences for elementary and spring conferences. I highlighted there that teachers may opt to conduct those parent conferences either telephonically or virtually. We are going to provide a modified calendar for fall conferences, as those conferences are required and not optional. And then the spring conferences, of course, for those at-risk students, those will also be conducted telephonically or virtually. But of course, the spring's a long way off, right? So we'll see what our local and state health officials have in store for us when we get to that point. But the elementary grading calendar has not changed at all. It is exactly as it was drafted in the spring. Secondary, that grading calendar that we created in the spring is still relevant. It's still relevant for periods 0, 7, and 8. So the traditional grading calendar is still relevant for periods 0, 7, and 8. For periods 1 through 6, where we're now taking 2 classes every 6 weeks, we do have a different grading calendar. It's one that your principals should have, and they will share with you at some point if they haven't already done so. So we're looking at, you're entering quarter grades at the secondary level midway through each of those sessions. Now, I know you're thinking, well, midway would be 3 weeks, but it's really the number of sessions is what we're talking about. So midway through the number of available sessions in that 6-week period is when you would be providing quarter grades for students. And in the category of childcare, health, and safety, back to teachers having the opportunity to work remotely or teachers having the opportunity to work in their classrooms. Nothing has changed in terms of teachers being able to bring their children with them to the classroom if they choose to work from their classroom. The only thing that we are requiring is that those students be of school age, TK through 8th grade. So our JPA did clarify with us, TK through 8th grade is the age group of students who are eligible to come into the classroom with their parents. District-based training in terms of best practices. If you haven't already covered this, your site administrators will cover health and safety protocols with you. And I know that there have been a number of conversations with risk management, a number of conversations with facilities and different departments as to how we're going to continue to disinfect and clean throughout our school sites and throughout, facilities district-wide. Physical distancing, there's nothing there that has changed in terms of we still need to maintain our 6 feet of distancing from one another, especially when we're in common spaces, main offices. If you're in workrooms, if you're in NPR, wherever you are on campus, physical distancing, social distancing is required. Face coverings. Face coverings are required, especially when you're in common spaces. The one thing that we want to reference here in face coverings is face shields. So, of course, people prefer to wear face shields, and at one point, it was the option of wearing a face shield or a face mask. And now the guidance is that if you wear a face shield, you're still requiring to wear a face mask covering your mouth and your nose. So you can wear a face shield, but that doesn't mean that wearing a face shield would allow you to not wear a face mask. Passive screening protocol, we're going to get to that in a second. So all employees, every morning, all employees, classified and certificated, you will complete a passive screening protocol, even if you're working remotely. The actual form itself will give you the option of checking off that you're working remotely from home, and that'll be the extent of what it is that you're completing. But the form that you're going to be required to complete is called the Employee Contact Tracing and Daily Screening Verification. Let me explain why that's necessary. That's necessary should we have a colleague or someone test positive on one of our district properties. We need to be able to identify if there were any close contacts there. Who else was on the campus? Who else was in the office? Who else was in the area? Who else was working in that department? So what we're requiring all employees, classified and certificated, to do is prior to their workday, complete an employee contact tracing and daily screening verification form that will be shared with you electronically. And that whole form is done electronically. You're not printing anything out for us. You're not submitting any hard copies of anything. It's all done through a Google form. Volunteers on campuses are not permitted. Obviously, right now we're not meeting in person with our students, but please do not invite, anyone who isn't supposed to be, who isn't considered to be essential on a campus to your classroom or to the campus. And one of the things that Child Nutrition is doing is they've already identified the school sites. We're not going to have food distribution taking place at every school site throughout Simi Valley. Specific schools have been designated for food distribution, and the hours have been identified as well, and that will be shared with you through your immediate supervisor as well. This is a 4-page document. I want to let you all know that the original MOU is a 15-page document, and there are a number of addendums. There are already 3 addendums to that MOU and counting. So we did our best here to take the 15 pages and the 3 addendums and create this document for you, and hopefully the expectation requirements will be a little bit easier to follow. Please feel free to reach out to your immediate supervisor if you need clarification. Feel free to reach out to me if you need clarification on anything. I hope this session was helpful to you. And I know that, again, none of us will be satisfied until we know all of us can return to our classrooms and return to our school sites and return to our departments and offices and know that we're guaranteed our health and safety from COVID-19. Until that happens, until students are in person, until students are with us in a traditional sense and playing together and being together and performing together and learning together and doing all of those things, we know that we'll continue to make the best of this situation. It won't be perfect, right? Perfect is the traditional model, but we'll do our best to make sure that we find as close to perfect as possible. And that's what we've done here. Is we think that even though these aren't perfect, scenarios for all of us, it's the best we can do with the situation that we have. With that, everyone, enjoy the rest of this week with the professional development. I know that between Ed Services and all of our colleagues throughout the district who are presenting, and some of our partners, our vendors, from Panorama Ed to all the online resources that we've made available. It should be a great opportunity for everyone to learn on Wednesday and Thursday, and grow together and learn together, and and be together in a virtual sense here. So enjoy the rest of the week. And one way or another, we're opening up school on Monday, August 17th. All right, everybody, have a great opening. Have a great beginning of the school year, and we'll be in touch.